towards sovereign, customizable, fine-tuned AI deployments with 10 times faster inference on NVIDIA Blackwell and first-wave availability across AWS Bedrock and Microsoft Azure Foundry. And of course, a clear geopolitical signal that Europe is betting on open, multilingual, and hardware-optimized AI to challenge the closed model dominance of OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic. And then we have Apple, who has quietly expanded from 2 iPhone plants in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka to a nationwide network of 40 suppliers across 8 states. And these are Kerala, Maharashtra, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and others. And this is shifting India from basic iPhone assembly to high-value component and equipment manufacturing that feeds the company's global supply chain and, of course, accelerates India's bid to rival China as a smartphone export hub. And then we have Bengaluru will open India's first startup and tech museum by 2027, an ambitious 12,000 square meter private-public partnership-backed project at the NGEF campus. It features India's top tech leaders, designed to chronicle 4 decades of innovation from ISRO to Infosys to India's AI revolution and cement the city's position as the country's undisputed innovation capital. And we have India, who has also successfully conducted a high-speed 800 km/h rocket-sled ejection test in Chandigarh, which validates canopy severance, ejection sequencing, and full aircrew recovery, firmly placing the nation among the few countries capable of independently testing and certifying next-generation fighter escape systems. And this is a milestone that strengthens India's case for deeper aviation collaboration on platforms like the Su-57 and, of course, expands its reliance push across air defense and AI-enabled infantry systems, while reinforcing the global confidence ahead of major BrahMos export deals and S-400 talks.
We're trying to pick the areas where we think it's important to do our own. We're super proud of Mistral. In France, we're trying to pick the areas where we think it's important to do our own. We're super proud of Mistral.
You just heard that right. That was France's special envoy for AI, Annie Bouverot, super proud of what Mistral has built in a short span of time. Just one line, but now it hits different because weeks after that interview, France's Mistral AI dropped the biggest open source AI release of the year. And tonight on Front Page, we break down how the Mistral 3 is not just a model launch, but a strategic play for sovereignty, compute independence, and global AI power realignment. Like, share, and subscribe. Of course, this one is super important. So Mistral AI has unveiled Mistral 3. It's a complete suite of 10 open multimodal AI models. It spans the Mistral Large 3, which is the frontier class mixture of experts model. Then, of course, you have the other models in the family, or the 14 billion parameter, 8 billion, and 3 billion small AI models. And all of them are under the Apache 2.0, fully unrestricted for commercial use. So the flagship Mistral Large 3 is a 675 billion parameter sparse mixture of experts model with 41 billion active parameters. And it's trained on 3000 NVIDIA H200 GPUs. And it offers a 256,000 context window, text plus image multimodality, and benchmark parity with top open frontier models. And of course, you have industry-leading consistency outside of English and Chinese. And unlike most open models with like weird licensing, Mistral's is actually open. In all terms, legally, technically, operationally, and it changes how enterprises, governments, and sovereign AI missions think about model deployment. So while big tech companies are chasing agentic frontier models, Mistral is playing a different long game. So it's focusing on sovereignty over scale, and you have countries like India, France, Brazil, UAE, and South Korea need models that they can own and not rent from Silicon Valley. So Mistral supplies exactly that. And Large 3 is trained heavily on non-English languages, not as an afterthought of sorts, but as a core design choice. So this is a direct contrast to US and China-centric models. And open plus multimodal plus mixture of experts seems to be the new global baseline. Because most open source software models had to choose, to be open or be frontier or be multimodal. But Mistral 3 does all of the three. It has edge first thinking, and because the smaller Mistral 3 models run on laptops, your robotic boards, drones, cars, and of course any of the offline environments you can think of. And this aligns perfectly with Annie Buverod's emphasis on tiny, efficient models focusing on energy reduction and privacy first computing. Essentially, this is also a full stack hardware co-optimization with NVIDIA. It features 10 times faster inference on the Blackwell GP200 NVLink 72 system, wide expert parallelism, and a Blackwell architecture optimized mixture of experts kernels. And of course, you have the NVFP4 precision quantization and the disaggregated inference via the NVIDIA Dynamo framework. You also get speculative decoding support and VLLM and TensorRT LLM integrations. What does all of this mean? It just means cheaper inference, higher throughput, lower latency, long context stability, and frontier performance on both data centers and edge devices. Look, Europe has never had a frontier class models with this level of hardware backing. So this is where the geopolitical implications begin. Because take a look at the cloud triangle. You have AWS, Azure, everywhere. And if you talk about Amazon Bedrock, it becomes the first platform to ship the entire Mistral family, large 3 plus all of the Mistral models. And of course, Azure Foundry positions Mistral 3 as the open sovereign alternative for enterprise copilots, rack systems, and agents. Then you have platforms like Hugging Face and Open Router make it globally accessible within hours. Folks, this is a sign that the cloud giants are hedging against a closed model future because they want customer choice, low inference costs, compliance for regulated industries, sovereign cloud deployments, and all of this is why Mistral 3 is being deeply integrated into Foundry's governance, observability, and evaluation pipelines. Because enterprises who hesitated with GPT or Google's Gemini now have an answer, they have an option because Mistral's core argument is quite simple that enterprises don't need the biggest model, they need the most customizable one. Guillaume Lampley says that 90% of enterprise workloads run better on fine-tuned smaller models. But why? Because you get lower latency, predictable cost, on-premise possible, and data doesn't leave the environment. Besides, small models also outperform when fine-tuned for specific tasks. This puts pressure on the scale-first philosophy of companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, forcing them to rethink how much frontier do enterprises actually need. And this is why Mistral 3 is a full-stack enterprise platform and not just an isolated model launch. Because you get the Mistral Agents API, you got the LeChat application with deep research mode, and you have their own AI studio, and of course you have the domain-specific reasoning model, which is the Magistral. Not to forget the code assistant powered by Mistral's own models, and you have the MCP connectors for enterprise integrations. So they're building the European version of data plus models plus agents and the tool stack. And of course, back to Annie Buverod's interview. She highlights that the France-India alignment is focusing on sovereign compute, sovereign models, public good AI, and energy-efficient AI infrastructure. She also stresses why nations must create and not just consume AI systems, and Mistral 3 embodies that philosophy. It gives countries the option to build their own AI future without being locked into US or Chinese platforms. And with Emmanuel Macron visiting India for the AI Impact Summit in 2026, this collaboration becomes a defining moment for Europe's digital sovereignty and India's AI mission, and of course, the entire global open source leadership. So the rise of small, efficient, and sovereign models and the timing of Mistral 3 launch is no accident. We're eagerly waiting for India's Mistral moment as well because when Sarvam, Bharat Gen release their foundational models by the end of this month or early next year, hopefully they should be able to surpass China's DeepSeek or Europe's Mistral models. And when that happens, of course, you'll be hearing it first on front page. So yes, Mistral 3 is the strongest open source AI stack ever released, a full spectrum push for sovereignty, edge intelligence, and enterprise grade reliability, and a distributed AI future. I repeat, you get 675 billion parameter large mixture of experts model to tiny 3 billion edge device models, which gives you 10 times speed ups on NVIDIA's Blackwell and cloud support from Bedrock, Azure, and on edge devices from day one. This is Europe's fiercest move yet in the global AI race. So everybody, tell us in the comments, would you trust open source models for your enterprise, or which Ministral 3 model would you try first? And another question, does the world need more frontier models or better distributed models? This is Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember to think AI, think AIM. Tonight on Front Page, Apple just quietly pulled off one of its biggest India moves ever. The company is expanding across Kerala, Haryana, Gujarat, Telangana, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and of course, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Yep, the India web of the world's most valuable tech company now spans 8 states and more than 40 suppliers, many of them MSMEs. So, like, share, and subscribe before you proceed. This one matters for India's tech future. While you're at it, Apple's India story began with two factories, the one in Tamil Nadu 2017 and Karnataka in 2024. But in just 24 months, the footprint has exploded into an 8-state network. You got Maharashtra, Karnataka, Gujarat, Kerala, Haryana, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, and Uttar Pradesh. And a report confirms that Apple now has 40 suppliers, many of them building components, sub-assemblies, and equipment for the new iPhone production lines in India. This is the first time India has moved meaningfully from assemble here to build here. And in the last 8 to 12 months alone, Apple has onboarded Hindalco in Gujarat, Wipro Pari, Jabil, Bharat Forge from Maharashtra, SFO Technologies from Kerala, VVDN Technologies from Haryana. Then you have JLK Technologies, Equus from Karnataka, plus a new AirPods plant in Telangana is already operational. So this is Apple shaping a domestic ecosystem in India quite fast, that too. So Apple's supplier base now falls into three buckets. You've got the component and the sub-assembly suppliers feeding Foxconn and Tata plants. Then you have suppliers exporting components to Apple's global supply chain. And then manufacturers of equipment used India's new iPhone production lines. And this third category is quite big because until recently, all that machinery came from China. But not anymore because India is replacing the Chinese value chains. So let's put numbers to this. Apple produced $22 billion worth of iPhones in India in FY25. And folks, 80% were exported, amounting up to $17.5 billion. And FY26 production is expected to hit around $25 billion plus, with exports topping $20 billion. So you got the value addition in Indian mobile manufacturing that has jumped to 18% in 4 years. And it took China 2 decades to reach 38 to 40%. And India is compressing 20 years into 4. That's quite staggering because just yesterday on Front Page, we covered how Apple hired Bengaluru educated Amar Subramanya, his ex-Google, ex-Microsoft, to run the company's entire global AI strategy. Because he now leads foundational models, ML research, AI safety and evaluation in the company. And this is no coincidence because talent plus manufacturing, India is always going to become Apple's second headquarters for the next decade. And if you missed that episode, link is in the description. So India is no longer assembling iPhones, it's building its parts too. So he urged India to push harder to attract the next wave. You got Dell, Cisco, Intel, TSMC, and Google, and this is the exact moment to accelerate. So you got Apple's pivot from China to India is primarily driven by China's slowdown, Huawei's resurgence, US-China trade tensions, tariff threats under Trump, and the supply chain shocks of the past 5 years because clearly India doesn't seem to be the plan B anymore, might as well be the plan A because from iPhones to you got the nothing smartphones, from Chennai to Noida, India is now an export powerhouse. We've covered all of them here on Front Page extensively. Once again, make sure to check all of it out if you haven't already. And now, Apple's 8-state supplier web is the blueprint for the next decade. If we want to put this in one simple line, this is what made in India but made for the world looks like. Because Apple's India framework is expanding like there's no tomorrow, and at the same time, it's putting Bengaluru based engineers in charge of its global AI future. So, if you're looking at the moment India overtook China in its electronic strategy, this might be it. So, tell us in the comments at what you think. So, which state do you think becomes Apple's next mega hub? And how proud does this new development make you feel? Folks, this is Front Page by AIM Network. Hope you enjoyed the development. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember to think AI, think AIM. My fellow Bengaluru folks, listen up because something interesting is brewing in Namma city. A 12,000 square meter startup and tech museum inside a repurposed factory guided by India's top tech leaders is opening in 2027. Yes, you heard that right. The city that built India's tech economy will now preserve it, teach it, and showcase it to the world. Before you proceed, like, share, and subscribe because this one defines the next decade of Indian innovation. So, Bengaluru will open India's first startup and tech museum by 2027. Location? Inside the iconic switchgear factory shed at NGEF Bayapanahalli. It's a 12,000 square meter industrial structure that's going to be transformed into a global level museum. So it is going to be built under a public-private partnership between the Department of Electronics ITBT and S&T. You got the Unboxing BLR, Karnataka Technology and Innovation Museum Foundation, that is the KTIMF, and the phase 1 is set to open in 2027 and phase 2 in 2028. This is going to be a living archive of India's tech revolution with Bangalore as the heart of the story. So this project has a board that reads like a Hall of Fame list. You've got Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw from Biocon, Chris Gopalakrishnan, who is the Infosys co-founder, Hari Marar, the BIAL CEO, Ajit Isaac from Quest Corp, Manu Saleh from Mercedes-Benz R&D, Vijay Chandru, Strand Life Sciences, Krishna Kumar Natarajan, the co-founder of Mindtree, and of course with government leadership from Manjula N, who happens to be the secretary of the ITBT ministry, Rahul Charanappa Shankar, who's the IAS officer and the MD of the department. And this is the strongest cross-sector coalition ever that's going to be assembled for a cultural tech project in India. According to Prashant Prakash, the chairperson and co-founder of Unboxing BLR, Bengaluru's 40 to 50 year tech journey spanning across India's science, innovation and engineering breakthroughs and the rise of Indian startups and the economic transformation led by tech over 25 years and a future-forward lens on AI, robotics, deep tech, climate tech and urban innovation will all be a part of a fully interactive and a tech-heavy experience open to contribution from startups, R&D labs and companies across India. So for decades, Bengaluru is the city that wrote India's IT story. It built unicorns before the world even became cool, gave birth to Infosys, Biocon, Flipkart, InMobi, Razorpay, Swiggy, Ather, Slice, Grown, countless other companies. Also built India's AI research base of sorts and houses the largest GCC hub in the world. And now also hosts India's fastest growing deep tech incubator, Innoverse, right next door. So together the museum plus Innoverse create a 12,000 plus 11,000 square meter innovation district in Bayapanahalli. This is a strategic soft power asset of sorts because you got cities like London with the Science Museum, San Francisco with the Exploratorium, Tokyo with the Mirakian, which built global reputations through spaces like these. India has had none but until now because Bengaluru will be the first Indian city where children, founders, researchers and global visitors can walk through the story of Indian innovation from ISRO to Infosys to AI and deep tech. Look, notably, Bengaluru is building the memory of Indian innovation, a museum for the past, but also an incubator for the future. It's going to be the city that tells its own story. So tell us in the comments below what exhibit would you want to see in India's first startup and tech museum? Want to see Flipkart's first office, or Infosys or Biocon's successful IPO stories, or the first computers that probably Narayan Murthy and co. procured to start the company, or the first enzyme product sold by Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw's company, Biocon? Well, yes, it's quite interesting actually. It was called papain, if I pronounce it right. It's an enzyme extracted from papaya fruit, which was apparently used in the brewing industry to prevent chilled beer from turning hazy. Or do you want to see ISRO's PSLV timeline? You got other options from India's first unicorn stories led by InMobi, Swiggy, and others. But don't worry, we've got you covered. When any of this happens, you'll be hearing that news first here on Front Page by AIM Network. So like, share, and subscribe. And always remember to think AI, think AIM. So something extraordinary just happened in Chandigarh. A 12-ton metal sled, strapped with the nose of a fighter jet, was blasted down a rail track at 800 km per hour. And in that split second burst, India quietly joined one of the world's most elite defense clubs. There's a really important test that decides whether a pilot lives or dies. And India might have just aced it. Like, share, and subscribe before we proceed to AM Network. Back again at the Terminal Ballistics Research Laboratory (TBRL) in Chandigarh, DRDO conducted one of the most complex dynamic tests in modern aerospace. It was a high speed rocket sled ejection test at a speed of 800 km per hour. It was an indigenous system that was tested, which was equipped with a fighter escape system, with the objective being a canopy severance. And of course, a perfect ejection sequencing with a full aircrew recovery and survival loads on an anthropomorphic test dummy. And the entire sequence was captured through onboard and ground based cameras. Officials from the IAF and the Institute of Aerospace and Medicine stood watching, and here's the line every defense expert is talking about. This test places India in an elite club of nations with in house dynamic ejection testing capability. And dynamic tests are far more complex than static, 0-0, or net tests. They only simulate the real violence of ejection. You got the air drag, sonic pressure, canopy fragilization, and human load limits. These are things you can't ignore, and this is the test you cannot fake because you either save a pilot or you don't. And India just saved the pilot because DRDO used a dual sled system carrying the forebody of an LCA Tejas. Multiple solid rocket motors fired in a phase sequence to hit a precisely controlled velocity, and the dummy pilot inside registered neck and spine loads, limb accelerations, moment forces, and stability during the chute deployment. Everything matched expected survival thresholds. Rajnath Singh called it a milestone in India's journey to full defense self reliance. He may be right because ejection systems are among the most sensitive technologies in military aviation. Very few countries master them, and India just did. This breakthrough lands at a time when India's defense ecosystem is moving at a pace that's not seen in decades because India is already in advanced discussions on the Su-57 and more S-400 regiments. Once again, we've covered all of these developments extensively here on front page, so make sure to check it out if you haven't already, that is. Ahead of the President Vladimir Putin's visit, the Kremlin has confirmed that India is interested in additional S-400 systems, and Su-57 fifth generation stealth jets are also on the table. And the tech transfer discussions are back again because India's ability to test ejection system on its own soil strengthens the case for deeper aviation collaboration. And India is negotiating the world's first AI-powered rifle fire control system, the ARBEL. It's a system that's built by IWI and Adani Defense. It uses real-time ballistic computation, MEMS-based firing algorithms, automatic precision burst release, and this takes infantry warfare into the age of software-defined combat. Because India just tested its multi-layered integrated defense weapon system, IADWS, for the first time ever. It also demonstrated QRSAM, VSHO-RADS, directed energy weapons, all neutralizing targets simultaneously, and this is the backbone of future air dominance. Because you also got the BrahMos, which is about to close $450 million in export deals, and interest obviously surged after Operation Sindoor, where BrahMos was the IAF's defense weapon of choice, and countries now want what India uses in real combat. Let's take it together. You got the rocket sled, IADWS, Arbel, S-400, and BrahMos. So you're looking at a defense ecosystem maturing across each and every domain, like air, land, sea, cyber, space, and now AI-driven infantry. So most people see this as a pilot safety test. But everybody, here's the real picture. This is India proving that it can build, test, and certify complex aviation systems without foreign supervision. Because once you master ejection sequencing, canopy severance, and pilot survival biomechanics, and with high-speed platform testing, you unlock a larger door. You can now certify next-gen fighters on your own soil. You got the AMCA, HLFT, 2-seat Su-57E joint work, and even future UCAV escape systems. So tonight's rocket sled test may look like a small event, but it isn't. This is India declaring that we don't need a foreign safety testnet anymore. We can test, certify, validate, and deploy our own aviation systems from fighters to air defense to infantry weapons and to missile platforms. And folks, let's take a pause because we all remember the tragic event that struck our own hero, our pilot at the Dubai Air Show. Events like that only reiterate the need for such systems even more. And this one test in Chandigarh might be the most important defense story of the year because the world buys your weapons only when you trust your weapons. And today, India proved the trust on the rails at 800 km per hour. Let us know how proud you are on this update and how this makes you feel in the comments below. I, for one, is immensely proud. Remember, this is Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember, think AI, think AIM.